One of the things that we were never taught when we were getting into the workforce in our 20s, and for some of us getting out of college and going into that big job, was that there is a huge difference between your working years and your retirement years and how you approach each of them. Hey, everybody, Mike Baltazar here. Thank you so much for joining me on this webinar Wednesday. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is retirement mortgages. And before you check out real quick, because you're in your 20s, 30s, or 40s, and you're like, hey, I'm a long way away from retirement. I want you to know that retirement planning starts today. And so for anyone out there who's contributing to a 401k plan or some sort of retirement plan, if you're putting your hard-earned money, your 2026 earnings into plans like that because you're going to get to that retirement age at some point in time, or at least we hope, right? Then you definitely want to stay tuned for today's episode, because we're going to do a tiny mindset shift, something that I wish I would have learned when I was in my 20s. I have an MBA. I have my undergraduate's a finance degree, and this was something that was not talked about. And actually, through the first part of my mortgage career, I didn't talk too much about retirement planning, combining that with mortgages. Of course, when people would ask for certain items, I was quick to deliver. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s when it just hit me that the decisions we make today has a huge impact on what we're doing as we enter into retirement. I'm 48 years old, close to be 49. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I look forward to those retirement years. And even though I've been in the industry for so long, since 1997, as a matter of fact, there's so many things I'd have done differently if I'd have just had this tiny mindset shift. So I'm going to share that with you right now. And so I'm going to put this back onto the screen. And that's this. There's these working years. I like to call them working years. And this is where we collect assets. This is where we put up our little nest eggs. This is where we collect our nuts. We store away for winter, or in this case, retirement. And we collect assets. And if we're doing it the right way, then when we enter into retirement, then we put ourselves in a comfortable position. I meet with seniors day in, day out, day after day. Love working with our senior citizens here in America. And a lot of them have done exactly what they set out to achieve, only to find out that they are going to outlive their retirement. Or maybe they didn't factor in that nasty thing called inflation. Or some people, unfortunately, they get divorced and they lost a good chunk of their retirement assets in the divorce, and now they're playing catch up. And so I meet with financial advisors quite often to help remedy this. Now, there's a difference between a good financial advisor and a great financial advisor. And what a great financial advisor does is they introduce to you what I'm about to share with you in this webinar, versus being reactive and using mortgage strategy as a last resort. So during our working years, we are collecting assets. And then once we enter to retirement, we start to deplete those assets. And there are some big, oh, by the way, welcome to retirement mortgage apply to everyone. Skip the slide there. The retirement assets that we use, some of us are able to use it today. Even if you're in your 20s or 30s, you're using some of your retirement assets today, because how many of us know that the cash that we have when we retire is something that we're using today? Whatever we spend today obviously cannot be used for retirement. So if we go out for pizza tonight and it costs $50, well, guess what? That's just $50 we're not taking to a retirement. Now, I'm not saying go and adopt the Ebenezer Scrooge approach to living. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that we are spending part of our retirement today. A lot of times I'll meet with seniors and their families when they're discussing possibly getting into a reverse mortgage. And what a reverse mortgage is if you're 55 or older, you can have a mortgage on your home without a required monthly mortgage payment. And so, one of the common questions is, okay, well, why would someone do that? Because interest is accruing every single month, but no one's paying the interest. So that balance is going up every single day. Why on earth would someone want to do that? Well, my question to the family is, well, do you want mom and dad to continue to make a mortgage payment even though they're on a fixed income, whether it's a pension and or Social Security? Be surprised how many people out there are just surviving on Social Security alone. Do you want your mom and dad to make a monthly mortgage payment on a mortgage that's never going to pay off? Now, there's some selfish kids out there that are like, well, that's my inheritance, so yeah, I want them to pay it down. But then I ask the 1,000-foot question that is going to blow their mind, which I'm going to share with you, which is a big part of today's webinar, and that's this. I ask the kids, well, let's just say mom and dad's paid $1,000 a month on their mortgage every single month. When they pass and when you collect your inheritance, do you want $1,000 of equity, or do you want $1,000 cash in the bank? And they look at me like I'm weird, like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, whatever they're putting towards the mortgage, they're taking out of your inheritance called the checking account, the savings account. When there's money being spent that they no longer have, well, it goes somewhere else. So all you're doing is you're moving your cash into home equity. And so while it would be great if there was a $10 million home that was paid off and you're going to inherit a $10 million worth of equity, that's great. Most Americans don't have that luxury. So once they have that little shift, they're like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, you know what? Mom and dad probably could come visit us a little bit more if they weren't making a monthly mortgage payment. Or, you know what? Maybe mom and dad could afford that medicine that's kind of expensive instead of sticking with the generic that, stopped working for them years and years ago. You kind of get the idea where they just kind of just get that aha moment, like, oh, okay. And then if that doesn't help them make a decision, I remind them that, hey, what's the house going to be worth when mom and dad die? And like, I don't know. And then for those that were around in 2008 and 9, when the market crashed and they saw home values get cut in half overnight, I asked them, like, well, what if mom and dad died hypothetically, back then, and you're inheriting a house that you thought was worth $1 million and now it's worth $400,000? Did mom and dad blow $600,000 of your inheritance? No. And one of the slides that we're going to get to here in a moment, there's a line item in there that says easy come, easy go. But again, let's just circle back to where you're using retirement assets daily, because we're spending cash daily. Now, a lot of us have 401k plans, and sometimes an emergency hits. Most of the time I see it to where it's just, financial mistakes that we make along the way that we call emergencies. But nonetheless, we see people pulling out money from their retirement plans. And once they do that, they're obviously subject to taxes and penalties. Some people justify it by saying, hey, I'm going to use it to buy a home, though. The penalties are less in those cases if I'm putting it towards the purchase of a home. Nonetheless, sometimes we're using our retirement assets before we hit retirement, whether it's cash, whether it's a 401k. The one item that a lot of people don't see as a retirement asset, and here's a big nugget to take away from today's webinar, is that home equity is a very, very big asset that has monetary value, substantial monetary value during retirement. And so when you own an asset during retirement, well, that's a retirement asset. And so home equity is something that's overlooked by so many people, especially a lot of financial advisors out there, which obviously does a huge disservice for their clients that are probably going to outlive their retirement plan, everything they set aside money for. Maybe it's not being utilized to help offset some unexpected items, whether it's something medical, maybe it's a divorce. It could be a number of different things. I've even seen some seniors strategically use reverse mortgages to help their grandkids to buy a home. So give part of their inheritance today. That way they can see with their own eyes while they're alive and on this side of living, that to see their grandkids see the benefits of their grandkids' inheritance in action. So that's always super cool. Now, home equity is tricky. And I think that's why a lot of people overlook it. It's really easy just to go off of like real numbers. Like, okay, here's what you do your checking account. Here's what you do your savings. Here's what your 401k. Here's how old you are today based on your projected retirement date. This is how much we could potentially have in place at that time. Here's let's factor a little bit of inflation. Let's factor a little bit. There's a lot of estimates that go into it, but there's statistics to back it up. Home equity is a little bit tricky because we had that 2008 crash, so it kind of throws all the numbers off. Before 2008, there was this golden rule that says, you never lose with real estate. It goes up year after year, and that was probably the case for a good part of history. But we had a nasty taste of reality, obviously, and so home equity is tricky, and there's so many variables that go into it, and so it makes it hard to predict, what's going to be the value of the home. A word I like to use when it comes to home equity is harvesting, because obviously it's not a crop. It's not corn in your backyard. It's not lettuce. It's not a vegetable. It's not a fruit, but it is something that can be harvested when the right tools are available. As long as someone qualifies for a type of loan and they can pull out some of their home's equity, well, that's harvesting equity. But it makes it hard to understand because you have to balance, okay, like how bad do I need this cash to harvest, take out this loan? What's that payment going to be? How does it fit to my budget? What are the costs associated with it? Is this justified? If we don't know what the home's going to be worth, would we need to, sell or whatever the case may be? Is this the best use of our savings? Now, is it better to take out a home equity loan versus to pull it out of your 401k plan? 9 times out of 10? Absolutely. But, the one thing to just take away from all of this, the one hack that I have to share on today's webinar, the little mindset shift that I want to give to you is treat home equity as a type of retirement plan. It's an asset that you owe during retirement. And the same way, if you have your money in a 401k plan being managed by whatever index or whatever plan that your company has you in, it could go down. You could lose half the value overnight. And of course, when that happens, you get scared. You call up your advisor and say, hey, how could we have avoided this? Do I need to go into something less risky? And of course, the advice that we all stand by is there's going to be the ups and the downs. You don't want to pull out when it's low, like ride that wave. It'll go back up. Maybe when it goes back up, that's when you go into something a little bit more safe. I trust my advisors to do whatever they're best at. I don't try to pretend to be that guy. And it's pretty funny when I meet individuals who try to do my job. I've been doing this since 1997. And so I don't try to talk anyone into it. I never talk down to anybody, but I tell people, let the numbers do the talking. Here's where you're at today. This is what we could do to improve this. And this is what it'll look like, down the road. And if we get lucky, then maybe we hit another boom and home values go up quite a bit. Now, that brings into the conversation retirement mortgages. Now, what exactly is a retirement mortgage? A retirement mortgage is a mortgage being held by anyone that's planning for retirement. So if you're in your 20s and you're planning on buying a home, or maybe you already own a home, and you're setting money aside for a 401k plan or other types of investments to plan towards retirement, or just to build your portfolio, even for today, then retirement mortgage should be part of your vocabulary. And so the person that is forward thinking and has adopted that little mindset shift, then they have the hack working for them. And the one thing to help make a tricky decision is just to have a baseline. Like, here's my baseline. I can't control every variable that's out there. Most variables we're just subject to the market, right? Subject to a lot of different things. But one thing that we can use as a barometer is cash flow. what's the cash flow look like? So a lot of times I'll talk to people that are, using their credit cards a little too much. And then when we sit down to talk, we find ways to uh, quote unquote borrow from themselves. Instead of putting $100 on a credit card every single month, a month after month, let's try to find a way to save you $100. And that way you're just using your own cash for that. Or if you're wanting to save more every single month because you're planning for something, then let's try to reorganize your debt or create some opportunity. One thing that just pops to my head that's kind of random is it's amazing how many people I talked to today, 2026, February 2026, where they have the opportunity to refinance with little or no closing costs, where my team and I pick up the costs of the loan, a majority of the cost for the loan, and they're literally recouping their costs within the first month or two with the savings, where they're decided not to do it because they want to wait for the savings to go up more in the future. I tell them, hey, listen, you could do this again in 6 to 8 months if it's available, but let's start taking advantage of it today, because who knows, we might have to ride this present economic wave for a year or two. Let's stock away some of that savings until then. A lot of them just want to wait. The cost of waiting is that they're paying an extra $200-300 a month on their mortgage payment when they don't have to. Again, if they had adopted that baseline of just a cash flow mentality, then obviously they would be making a lot better decision. So my encouragement is just have a conversation. Everyone has a different walk, a different journey. Not everyone is a trust fund baby. A lot of us have to be very strategic with our day-to-day, how we spend our money today. What are we setting aside for retirement? How are we planning for retirement? What are some other things that I need to take into account? Am I going to put a kid through college? Am I going to have to deal with this or that? Am I taking care of aged parents? I mean, there's a lot of different things where everyone's story is a little bit different. And one of the things that I like to do is I like to treat each and every client the way they're supposed to be treated. Give them the information that they need, not a big basic overview like, hey, this is a one size fits all, go read this book and you'll be fine. Listen to Dave Ramsey, you'll be fine. No, everyone needs to have something that's custom tailored to their needs, but then also working with someone that has a full toolbox. And that's a part of the reason why several years ago I became a mortgage broker, as opposed to be aligned with just one singular company. I have numerous companies at my disposal. A lot of tools, resources, programs are not available to the average loan officer. And so I love to serve people in that capacity. Just know this, you're not alone on this journey. You have me, you have my team. And I know you're great at what you do. Chances are very good that I already work with you in some capacity because you're smarter at me than and what your profession is. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. But then I encourage you to just let my team and I do what we're great at. And if we do have a conversation, it's not going to be a sales call. You have my word on that. For those of you that know me personally, you know that I hate sales. I've hated sales since I was a teenager. And so when I got into the mortgage industry, I didn't know I was getting into a sales position, but then I became uber successful because I love to educate. I love to help people. And so I've found that if the more information I get into people's hands, the more successful that I could be. And so that's all that the conversation would be, is like, here's some helpful information to help you go further faster. And we want to share our gifts and talents with others. We want to have that opportunity, even if it's just a phone conversation, if it's a Zoom call, if we're presenting to you and to your team. It could be something that's small. It could be something that's grand. I love traveling across the country. So if you want me to speak at your next big event, I'm happy to do that. But I'm also happy to have a one-on-one conversation with grandma or grandpa over a cup of coffee, at their home. Whatever the case may be, just let us help you in whatever way possible. I hope that today's webinar shed a little bit of light on maybe something that can help you go further faster, or maybe you know somebody that just needs to have an expert lock arms with them, whether they're a professional trying to serve their clients better, or just an individual that's just trying to figure out life or find a more effective way to do living. Hey, everybody, thank you so much again for joining.